Hey, it's another day, and I have been working on the concept of having Paul communicate with 3 other consultants. And what the ultimate goal would be, Paul creates a plan, Peter, Mary, and Brenda, and I don't know if you ever heard of Peter, Paul, and Mary. It's an old singing group. They play into that. And Brenda we're going to keep around because she started the whole thing off. Paul's going to create a plan, and the 3 of them are going to detect when that plan was created. They're going to look at the plan, and one at a time, consecutively, they're going to check that plan, and they're going to put their replies to that plan in their own file. That'll end with, their name.review, for instance. And when all 3 reviews are in, Paul will then take a look at them one at a time and respond to them one at a time. And each time that they're going to get better and better. So he may agree, or they may agree, or they may disagree, or collectively it may be a partial agreement with any one of the consultants, and that's going to result in an iterative process if all 3 of them are not in agreement with Paul. The idea is to iterate through the reviews, through a new plan, until they, across the board, are all in agreement. And then I should hear a bell ringing, which is a little ding on my computer, a little bash script I created in Linux that works through an SSH command that'll alert me it's time to take a look at something. So I should be alerted because if they iterate over 3 times, or actually 3 times, if Paul and one of the consultants get through 3 iterations of a plan and still can't come to an agreement, that means they must differ. And I don't know if 3 is the right number or not. We'll play with that a little bit. That means they're having a hard time agreeing on whether this is the right way to do something. And at that point, I want to hear an alert. And in the code it says so the judge can weigh in on it. Well, I'm the judge in this case. Paul is the plan maker. The other 3 are consultants. These are the roles that are involved here. And even if they all agree, they get to the point where all 3 consultants and Paul are in complete agreement, which is great, they're ready to move on, I want to see what that plan is anyway, so I've got it set to let me know by alert, so I can weigh in on and agree with the plan as a whole and move forward, just to kind of monitor the progress. At some point, if I'm ever completely happy with what they're doing, then I'll remove that part of it and I'll just let them create, and only be alerted when they can't agree on something. So I have no idea if this is going to work. Let me minimize myself. Well, actually, I can minimize myself. All right. Not make myself invisible. I've done that before. Okay, so here I'm working with Claude code and getting an idea of what is supposed to happen. Let me bring this up a little bit. Okay, this is kind of a little bit of what I just told you. It's currently when I run, I'm going to run the command npm run review. That kicks things off, and I've got a README file that shows you how to install this. I'm not ready to share it with the public right now because I don't even know if it works as we speak. We're about to find out together. But here we see immediately when I type that, it's going to automatically detect the state where Paul left off. Okay, because that file's there. It's going to look at it. And in this case, we left off at this phase and this particular plan. There's another directory previous to this, which was the foundation phase, which was already completed. But the script is going to detect that here, figure out where we left off, and where the last plan is located. That plan would have been generated by Paul, and so this is where the plan will be. That's where it expects to detect it. The project, which in my case is called Tree of Life, that's an acronym. That by the way, you're going to have a place in the config files. There's a single config file where you can put what's the project name, what's its acronym, what's its code base location, what's the website domain name going to be, and so on. And this will pick all that up, which it's doing here. And now this is going to copy the plan into the orchestrator. Is going to copy the plan into the it's called a directory called CM the plan, which is CompuMatter, our business, the plan. And the name of the file is called Plan Maker and a timestamp .plan. That means the plan maker, Paul in this case, is creating that file by that name, and the timestamp is going to let everybody know when this happened. And that is going to invoke Peter. Upon the creation of that, Peter's going to read the plan and read the Paul context files, and then write a file in that same directory called Peter timestamp conversation. The orchestrator is then going to read Peter's response and replies in that same file. Peter will reply to that, and they will continue until they agree or it hits 3 rounds in deadlocks, at which point I'll get an alert. They don't say that there, so hopefully that's still the plan. Same process with Mary, same process with Brenda. Now, these names of consultants you'll be putting in the config file as well. So you get to personalize it. You get to name your staff. And when all 3 reach an agreement, the bell rings. The terminal will print a summary of what each consultant raised and what was agreed, then start the process, hands control back to you. Then I open and read the 3 conversation files, decide as a judge, and then I simply run Paul apply to continue on. Now the only question I have, one thing to be aware of, the plan already exists and is detailed. The consultants will read it in full, all 700, including so their feedback will be substantive. Yep. This is your first run. Okay, ready to run it. One question. I don't see anything about the judge being alerted. Let's see. There we go. If they hit 3 rounds and deadlock, is that built in? Now, right after this question, I'm going to run it. We're going to see the results of it. Okay. It's in the prompt instructions, but not enforced in codes. That's a meaningful distinction, so I'm glad I brought that up. Okay, on deadlock, it'll run the bell. Otherwise, I'll never know what's actually happened. All right. Okay, yes, build that. So I'll run those 2 commands first. Okay, so the Peter initial review is happening, but I'm in the blind as to what else is happening. Okay, there they are. There's the files. So now there's quite a bit of conversation here. Okay. So, review. The schema is largely sound and correctly implements blah blah blah. The orig ID location split is properly applied. The 3-table contact design is correct. The 3-tier hierarchy. However, I have 5 blocking defects and 2 significant concerns that must be addressed before this plan executes. And that looks like it's a review. And then it names the blocking defect. The model count inconsistent. Plan counts 13 tables everywhere it matters, but says 11 models in 3 other places. So this is interesting. And a suggested fix, it looks like, add product string corresponding line number, and then another transactions missing from metadata column, and so here is a list of, and then even a significant concern area. So this is the review and a minor notes, and then they go on to say what is correct, summary of required fixes before execution. So now here's the plan maker's response. Now this is cool. Model count inconsistency 11 versus 13. They are in agreement. Point 2, missing track inventory versus product catalog in agreement. And they notate what the plan change is going to be. Point 3, also in agreement. The 3 consequences you named are all real. The SKU-based reporting is brittle AI layer needs the FK for pattern queries and inventory drawdown. Okay, 0.4, agree. 0.5, agree. 0.6, agree. 0.7, agree. Wow. 0.8, and I was hoping to see one of these, partially agree. The concern about ambiguity is valid. The plan should be explicit about the design, but I disagree that the documents are clearly mutable. The plan's intent is to replace, not update. Delete the old document, record, and upload a new one, blah, 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 blah. Plan change, add one sentence. So, and here are the changes that they're going to make. Now, at this point, all 7 blocking defects, okay, so ready to update plan. Okay, so let me back out of here. I don't think I'm getting it all with the tail F, so I'm just going to take a look at a cat here. Yeah, it continues on. Peter review round 3. So I should be getting a ding if this doesn't come together. Oh, look at this. All 8 resolved. Round 3. The plan is clear to execute. Final conclusion or confirmation. Architecturally consistent with the rest of the schema. Remaining items all confirmed clean. The plan is ready to execute. So, Peter is in agreement with Paul. That's just fantastic. Okay, now I'm going to clear this. We're going to take a look and see if there's any other conversation logs. Oh, Mary's got an initial, here we go, Mary initial review. So we should be expecting something from Mary. I mean, this is my my perfect reality, honestly, with AI, is I've got a table full of experts. You know, it's not going to be just one AI agent's opinion about this is how it should be, and I'm the one who has to decide whether it makes sense or not, because we know that we're operating outside of my area of expertise. I've never created global enterprise software that has all the pieces of the puzzle that I know we need. Now, I do have to provide the game plan about what I know we need. All the spokes in the wheel that I talked about during the previous video, and many more: human resources, marketing, you know, email, routing, the repair software. You know, eventually I want to get a repair mobile app, website management, server management, all these. I've got so many different things going on in this store, and it is a genuine large-scale enterprise software that would cost millions to build and require probably 10 easy for me to say, 10 developers to spend a couple years on this. So Mary has reviewed, and the plan maker is replying to Mary now. Let's see what they have to say. There's Mary's conversation. And we'll just come right to the top of that. Okay. Now, it's important to say Mary has no idea what Peter she's forbidden. All consultants are forbidden from viewing one another's suggestions. We want to make sure that they're, and that should result in less problems as we get to the last consultant, but it's just like people. We've all got different experiences. I'm presuming that they are going to have different experiences and look at it from slightly different angles. Okay, issue 1. Model count is wrong in AC1. So it lists 13 models across 2 tenancies, and the checkpoint correctly lists all 13, but AC1 says 11. So that's the same, seems to me to be the same issue brought up earlier. So why is that happening? That's interesting. And we'll see if, and I may be, the number of 13 and 11 I saw earlier, but I don't know if this is in the same context. Issue 2, quantity available, derived and stored as a fact. That is a new one. Issue 3, contact identity email uniqueness has a null gap for context. That's a new one. So here we're getting some new ones in here. Load documentation and projects still carries stale store ID language. Oh, so it's actually looking at the files and seeing an inconsistency there and bringing that up, which is a bit of a surprise. Okay, Plan Maker round 1 response. Thank you. Issue 1, model count discrepancy. Agree. The 11 model count is a stale artifact from before the 3 table contact design was added. So they are looking at his initial plan. This is an area for improvement. It's been updated, but Paul did not update the plan to reflect what had been changed. So I'm going to highlight that, and we're going to talk about that with Claude and see if this model can be improved so that that doesn't happen. But agree on issue 2. It's a new issue. Issue 3 is a partially agreed. Issue 4, agree. Issue 5, agree. And this is great. And now we've got I think it was Mary coming back with yet another one new issue line down at the bottom here. This is the only remaining structural concern that needs to be addressed. So they're getting very close to coming into agreement. So I'm going to go back to Claude here. I am noticing a situation where Paul had made corrections to the plan after the conversation with Peter, yet Mary was responding, was coming up with the same problem. Was already solved between Peter and Paul. Here is the, for instance, conversation from Mary's file. I'll paste that in there. And we don't get to see what that said, but that was what it said. And how could we improve the model so we can ensure, oh thank you Acrobat, new improvements, update the plan and each other consultant. The reality is each consultant shouldn't be reviewing until, yeah. Okay, so this is just part of the process. I'm very excited at what I see so far. Honestly, if that flaw were baked into the cake and they had to see something that they've already fixed, there's some inefficiency there, there's some extra tokens there, but it's still, I mean, I'm not doing anything. They're going back and forth and doing. I'm going to take a look while I'm waiting on Claude to come up with whatever he's got going on there. Okay, we have a deadlock, and I can't remember if I heard a beep or not. I'll have to play that video back. But here we do have a situation where Mary and the plan maker did not agree after 3 rounds. Review Mary's conversation and write your ruling in the judge conversation. Then I've got to rerun NPM run review. So let's take a look. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's in Paul, CM. Yeah, those little beeps that you hear, that should have been what I was hearing when they ran into an iterative block. Okay, so let's look at Mary here. All right, status is disagree. Critical process fail. Okay. Mary's response, and that's where it ends, is with Mary's response. The plan maker has verbally agreed to fix 5 distinct changes across 2 rounds, and none of them are in the plan file. So that's the real issue. Paul's just not holding the persona end of the deal. It says the substance is not in the dispute. The plan is what gets the plan is up to execute one inherent quantity available. 7 agreed changes, 0 applied to the artifact. Okay, so that's really what it boils down to. So that's interesting. Okay, so they've changed the flow, which is good. The 3. So it looks like Paul's saying one thing and doing another. How can we ensure the plan file is updated at the point Paul agrees to make those changes? So this is just part of the process of resolving, it's evolution. People do the same thing. It's like they say they're going to do something. In fact, my sweetheart has accused me of doing that more than a few times, and I've been guilty. So there's a function there called plan apply plot, I think it was. Prompt, that's better. Plan apply prompt to reflect that it's now a cleanup pass, not the primary mechanism. Okay. So it looks like we're good. This closes the gap entirely. Paul can no longer say, I'll change X without immediately changing it. Okay. And we're going to run the review, and let's see if we're just going to see if it picks up right where it left off. So we're going back to Peter in the initial review. That's kind of a flaw too. I notice when I reran npm run review, It restarted with Peter, even though Mary was still in deadlock. I think, how do we deal with that? Not resolve. I did not make judgment. It was a code issue. I don't know that I want to think about this on a video, but it seems right now Mary has a history to look at. Let's just see what these, still on Peter's. I wonder if it's wiped out. No, we still have, oh, okay, so this is good. So what we have here, and this is what I intended to have happen, the plan maker timestamp has changed to 7171 as you see here. So Mary and, excuse me, it's changed to this. This is the later one, to 457. So that's the new plan, and that's the one Peter's going to look at, and that's the one Mary's going to look at. So Peter's still initially reviewing. Now I'm hoping, based on the new correction, that the planning file that we see here, this plan maker update, well, now see we have a problem. That is exactly the same file size. Well, maybe it's expected to be the same file size, because really the last iteration was a total code failure. Oh, and we're getting something on the screen now. It's giving us more than just who's replying, but we're getting to see what they did. Consultant Peter, initial review. And that's nice. That's a good change. Critical issues, contact type is the wrong table type, quantity available is stale, correct approach, product ID on line items, significant no metadata on transactions. Okay, so we get a number of things here. Minor issues, what's done well, status disagree. Peter, round one, plan maker replying. Beautiful. And at the point where the plan maker replies, it's going to show us what the plan maker had to say. But you know, it goes on to say what's done well. The two-layer tenancy design, organization ID, and location ID, because what we're building here is supposed to be global in nature. And it's also, and the organization ID is an indicator that I have a long-range intention to be able to sell this as a software as a service to other companies, and so we've got to have an organization ID tied into the mix in order for that to happen. No store ID anywhere, clean, so they're using location ID instead of store ID, and a wide variety of things that it liked. Required fixes, it's got 7 of them. And so as long as they're not in agreement, the status will be disagreement. Because there's no such thing as a partial agreement on the part of the consultant. They're either in complete agreement or they're not in complete agreement. There's only 2 statuses, it would appear, for the consultant. And I know I've got 3 statuses on the part of the plan maker, which is agree, disagree, or partially agree, or just partially, and then it replies with whatever those partial agreements, disagreements, or would be. Okay, we've got something here. Plan maker round 1. Starts off with "You're right." Let me get this one a little bigger here. "You're right. The skew-based matching is brittle for reporting. A nullable is the correct. Issue 5, no metadata. Issue 6, agree. So that's the most important part. We're seeing agreements. So somehow Paul is missing these things, and it's important to have somebody following up. The asymmetry was real and confusing. Product ID gets an enforced Prism FK relation, but location ID does not. And it goes on and on and on. Agree. So all 9 issues agreed. Every change has been applied to the plan. The schema in task 1 now reflects 13 models counted. This is more like it. Plan updated, ready for re-review or execution approval. So he's going to re-review, and that's what I want him to do, because the plan that Paul creates may or may not be exactly as he said it is going to be. So let's just take a look at that. We'll take a look at plan 8457, which is the one that they're on right now. Okay, it starts off with what phase, what plan, you know, a little background music on what part of the plan we're on, because this project is quite large in its overall scope. What the goals are right now, what the purpose is right now, and some output information, some contacts, infrastructure, schema validates. So there's quite a bit of information. I won't go through it all because you can tell by the size of the scroll bar, it's quite extensive. This is Paul's initial plan about what comes next. And these are the things that Peter and Mary and Brenda are responding to, and Paul is updating this plan. Let me just see something. I'm going to get a date on that plan and see. So we've got a 1718, which was just a few minutes ago, that I can see the plan, the latest plan was in fact updated. So we know Paul is doing what I want him to do. He's making modifications, improving that plan, so Peter can re-review it and ensure that they're there, and we don't end up with Paul's not doing what he said he would do. So let's go back over here. Status agree. Peter agreed. Round 2, applying Peter's agreed changes to the plan. So they're both in agreement. All substitute issues from round 1 are fixed. 2 remaining gaps are auditing deficiencies, not functional ones. And Prisma validate. NPX will catch any schema errors, and the A fully covered. Blah, 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 blah. The plan is ready to execute with the caveat that the 2 gaps above should be closed. So this is wonderful. Peter and Paul are done. We're on to Mary's initial review. And so even though Mary ran into they failed to agree, and she brought up a valid point the last time, that he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. We've resolved that. We've clearly resolved that. Now let's see how Mary's review goes. And this should cause us to see none of those duplicate problems where one of the consultants come up with the same problem that a previous consultant already has, because in this case Mary's not even getting a chance to look at the review, to review the plan until after Peter's conversation is complete. Initially, some of the AI feedback was, well, why don't you give each one of these consultants specific areas? One's security, one's this, one's something else, one's UI, and so on. But I'd rather have them have all the expertise possible. And I provided that expertise. It's in the configuration file where I provided, a dozen different areas of expertise that they all have, and they all have the same expertise. and they are in fact coming up with new and different things. Okay, Mary's done. Let's go to the top here and weigh in on it. Factual error. Task 1 says 11 universal errors. We're back to that 11 versus 13, but that looks like it's just a name, but still, it's probably unique. We'll see. Contact model, another thing with the contact model, I've seen that before, probably a different thing. Again, it's a minor design note, not a blocker. Issue 3, SSOT rules is stale. Plan doesn't address it. So store ID I don't think exists anymore, yet the single source of truth talks about a store ID. And I agree, if they've decided to remove it, that should be removed. Single source of truth, that's something that I want in all of my projects. We should all be sure that we're using the same code, methods, components everywhere in a project and not duplicating that effort, and this ties into that. Location model has no deleted at, so that's new. Org has deleted at, location doesn't have deleted at, they're suggesting it should be. Contact identity has a deleted at, and so on. Correct approach gives them some advice. And can you imagine if I were to ever try and do this? Just even one of these replies, I'd have half my day figuring out how to come up with it. And really wouldn't come up with it because it's outside my area of expertise, totally. And so, really a lot of little things here, a lot of them. Mary round 1, plan make a response. Here we go. And the response, agree. So good, solid information. And they have summary of edits made. We can take a look once again at the date from 1718, the time rather, is now 1726. So we know Paul has been proactive this time with Mary, and she's not going to be frustrated that he's not responding. Okay, Mary's having her say. I will say it's not as long. All 4 edits are confirmed, present in the plan file, 1, 2, 3, 4. The remaining 2 remaining concern, neither is a blocker. Okay, so she's down to a couple of suggestions. That's freaking beautiful, though. Remaining issue A, remaining issue B. What remains correct? So plan maker is now replying. Let's see if he takes care of those other issues. And that's an interesting thing because they're not deal breakers, but they're suggested fixes. And we're seeing that rule number 9 already flag stale store ID. I would like to see that addressed. Project Markdown also says store ID, which we know now is not applicable. And they don't waste any time replying to each other. Okay, so plan maker's response, agree, the code was updated, but the prose description above the model block was not okay, straightforward oversight. Yeah, they don't take anything personal here. So they've changed that line. Remaining issue B, agree you're right on all 3 counts and the severity ranking is correct. It's a direct execution hazard to have Rule 10. It has an actual example of store ID. Future agent writing that from that example creates a store ID. So it doesn't say that he's fixed it. Okay, then they go on to say that's a runtime failure, not just a semantic mismatch. So I would think that they're going to make that change. Project again, back to the store ID again. Okay. Mary round, so summary of round 2 edits. Still don't see anything referencing the store ID. Okay, we're looking at Mary's response. Both edits confirmed in the plan. Okay, role type per identity, all 3 documentation with severity. Issue, enumerate all 3 documentation debt targets with correct severity ranking. Rule 9, Rule 1, this file wins conflict as highest severity. I'm still concerned about whether it's been addressed. So decision still describes the key constraint, the old syntax, whether the semantic description remains accurate, so this doesn't mislead a reader on intents. Decisions is an append only and out of scope for this plan. I do have scope creep conditions built into this so that if they're getting too far off the rails on things that really aren't related, they can be brought into bear. Summary they want it to be thorough. The executor would be me, can note this in the summary documentation if they want this to be thorough, but it does not block execution. But the schema correctly, separately classifies contacts in the org ID, but the schema correctly gives contacts.location ID as nullable per. The plan and schema are right. Grouping is a simplification. Not a blocker. The schema is authoritative and correctly implements the ADR. So there is the question I have here is, does the documentation need to be updated? We may get into a, oh, we're on to Brenda. So applying Mary's agreed changes to the plan. So I'm going to have AI look at this round of Mary right here. Okay. I notice in reviewing this conversation, it appears Mary is calling out that documentation is stale in some areas given the plan changes that were made. Can you see examples of that? And if so, how do we build in to the exchange so if Paul resolves a problem that a consultant highlighted, and that affects the documentation, that those documentation files are brought up to date. Okay, so this is another area of evolution. We'll let Claude read the documentation and see what he thinks. I'm going to call Claude. Claude's a typical male name, so we'll go with Claude being a he. Right, so it was as I was trying, I'm trying to digest this stuff, and it looks like I got it right, and that always feels good to get it right. I can see what's happening. Mary correctly identified stale documentation across 3 files. With its dangers, this file wins clause and decisions MD. Paul agreed that they're stale, and the plan's output section now flags them, but the actual files weren't touched. The problem lives right there in the plan maker prompt. Constraints: do not write code, only edit the plan file, not other files. So that's a constraint. Paul should be able to edit those documents. He should update it immediately, right? Yeah, the constraints to not write code only apply to the so Paul should be able to write code. Oh, but he can't write code until everybody's in agreement. That's right. That still applies. So I need all consultants and Paul to be in agreement before he can actually write the code. See where we're at here. Brenda and Paul are going at it now. Initial review. Okay, what the plan does, what she agrees on, issues. Quantity available, drop from inventory without explanation. Okay, this may have to do with the documentation not being brought up, because they're all reading the same documentation. That's why that becomes important. You've got to update the documentation so the next person reading it is getting the right information. Previously, we weren't updating the plan to make sure it matched. Now we need to be doing the same with the documentation. And again, she's talking about the documentation debt center, and the contactor has no deleted at. I thought that was already dealt with, but perhaps not. So Brenda has a lot less to complain about. That's for sure. And we're already on to the plan maker accepted all 9 of Peter's and applied the change. I verified it directly. Here is my assessment. Okay, my round 1. I'm not sure who we're talking about. No, we aren't to Brenda. Okay, Brenda's review. Okay. So she's recognizing the plan maker applied all 9 of Peter's reviews. But the plan file is, and it is the updated version. Good. She verified it directly. Good on you, Brenda. And partially resolved. The substance is fixed. Quantity available has been removed. The plan now, and she's complimenting Paul, saying, good. The rationale problem is not fully fixed. The plan itself. Okay. That what to avoid block should include quantity available. So, and another unresolved. No e-commerce order. This was not raised by Peter and was not addressed. So, Brenda, again, same. They all have the same information, the same things to look at, but there is new discovery happening with 3 different minds looking at the information. Okay, so that's a serious one for issue number 2. Very long in the explanation. Issue number 3, also not raised by Peter. I don't even know that, so she evidently knows, well, wait a second, not raised by Peter, that means she's reading Peter's files. She's not supposed to know that. So we're going to have that conversation. Yeah, she's blaming everything on Peter. So she's making herself feel better by pointing at the other one, and this is Brenda. Okay, so Brenda round 2, Brenda responding. So while we're looking at that, I'm going to notate that file name, which should just be Brenda. Okay, back to Claude. I am noticing comments in Brenda's conversation file that indicate she knows what Peter has said. It is, now let me think about that. It's the, I just heard a beep that time. So if I look over here, I'm going to see a ringing bell for judge review. So it's a little bit low on the beep side, but I heard it in the background. So we've got to address what that is. But before I do, is there an advantage to them reading other people's comments? I don't think so. Because the problem with that is it prejudices them. There is the idea that, has it been resolved? Peter brought it up. He said he was going to resolve it, and the problem's still there. But that consumes tokens, just validating what somebody else said or didn't say, which is another problem all on its own. Right now, we just want them all to scan that whole project and come up with their own conclusions, which they're doing. But this is the first time we've noticed one straying. That no consultant will review any other consultant's files. They can only review the plan. The documentation, right? And the plan. That's the current timestamp plan, or actually the latest timestamp plan. Okay, some of these things, I hope I'm getting it right, because otherwise I'm baking something flawed into the cake. But that is the way that I've got it written out, so that timestamps will dictate what the latest conversation is, and that's the one they should be looking at. So just to remind anybody that has lost this and has been watching this for a while, I'm using a product called Paul. And Paul, let me bring up Paul's GitHub page, created by a Christopher Kaler. and it's an overlay of some kind that allows me to, you can see it's using a Claude type look and feel. You use the slash command, Paul, to start things off. And at this point, I've got Paul baked into the NPM code, and so it's all being done in the background. But I started off just using slash Paul init and then slash Paul and asking Paul to manage this whole thing with no consultants. And I liked it well enough that I thought, well, you know, let me get a consultant involved, and opened up another tab and get a consultant involved. And that went well enough that I started thinking about the concept of multiple consultants and have continued to kick the ball downfield. And I didn't know how to do this, so I asked Claude Code. I said, look, this is what I would like to do. I'd like to have three agents, three consultants, and I want one plan maker, and they're the only ones that can change code, but they're not allowed to change code until they and the other three consultants are in agreement. And I gave them the file system example. That was my own. They can write to a file, and the timing of the file would dictate when they looked at it and all that kind of stuff. But I wasn't sure how I was going to pull off the timing. How would they know when a file was done being written by somebody else? And that's when Claude suggested this technology stack that I'm using now, and which is a node-based technology stack. And that creates the dynamic capability that each can watch what the other one's doing. Okay, so we say the timestamp variable on the main is no longer needed for only the plan file to be verified. So changes have been made. Now gets date now. Okay, there was a timestamp breach of some kind. Brenda sees her file. Okay, has no way. Okay. Okay, so Brenda sees her file is Brenda conversation, but has no way to guess Peter conversation, the prompt. So the timestamp breach was their ability to look at another consultant's file. It was not of the same timestamp. It was evidently a different timestamp, and that made it allowable because that wasn't shored up. You are now permitted to read. Okay, Brenda is now given an explicit allow list. She's allowed to read the plan maker. Right. Okay, and Brenda conversation, but well, that's interesting. That's her time. I guess that's her timestamp, which is slightly different than the timestamp of the plan, because it did indeed start later than the plan file was written. Okay. Okay. She doesn't know the file name. She's explicitly told those paths are off limits. Okay, so that's good. We'll go with that. Now, revise. Okay, so final state. All issues from round 1 and 2 are resolved. The two of them have talked about. The schema is architecturally correct. So if all issues from round 1 and 2 are resolved, they're back to the documentation. SSO2, SSOT rules rewrite to reference instead of store ID. That's still hanging around. Review the plan. All right, so let's see. This is Brenda, I believe. Yeah, this is Brenda. Okay. So Brenda agreed round 3. I'm going to ask them because it looks like Brenda agreed round 3 with what? It looks like these are, everything else says resolved, resolved, resolved. Verify exactly what I am supposed to be judging there. It appears they are both in agreement. Yet this section leaves me wondering. So we'll let Claude read down that whole conversation list. So they're saying no deadlock. Okay. The open issue is pre-work that must happen before 1 and 2, not before 1. Brenda is saying run 1 on the migration, but before you start, 3 documentation files must be manually because they still say store ID. The specific stale content confirmed, still present. My decision as a judge. Approve. Migration plan itself is correct. All consultants agreed. Before I can run Paul apply on 1, 2, those 3 files need to be corrected. I was under the impression if Paul agreed the documentation be corrected, he had the authority and expectation to proceed and update that documentation. Were they both in agreement? That the documentation was wrong on those same points. So it's clearly not at a point yet where I can just bow out and watch this thing be created. And by the way, nothing's being created right now. It doesn't get created until they're all in agreement, which will result in good code. Paul and Brenda were in agreement. The docs are stale, but not on whether to do it right now. Documenting this, Paul agreed they're stale, agreed to the plan's output section, never committed to editing the actual files. Paul round 2 addressed all 5 of them, but never responded to her doc editing command. Brenda gave status agree anyway, which is screwy, accepting the plan as correct, but put her process concern on record as a parting shot. Wow, this is just like people. So they decided not to fully agree. Paul never said, I will now edit, and he said, I will note them as a debt. So this run predates your new prompt change. Paul didn't have permission, to instruction to edit the context files. That fix is in place for future runs. Okay, so there you go. They're genuinely dangerous right now. Explicitly says it overrides contradiction any future Paul session, which is every session of the further your call as judge. The plan itself is approved. The part is clean, but before you can run, ask Paul to fix these 3 files now. Okay. That's a contained edit task. So how do I ask Paul, given that I'm just reviewing all this from the command line? I guess I'm going to open up, this is new information. In fact, let me look at that. There is no way for me to address Paul when the judge is alerted. It goes to a... Okay, I want to see if there's a way as a judge to, because I get an alert and that's great, but it drops me to a command prompt. You know, ringing bell, have a command prompt, review the plan, make a decision. It's kind of ugly. But once again, that's the evolution. So Claude's going to do a little zigzagging on that. Okay, so we are adding that. Each one will be presented in the terminal with a yes, no. Apply the change in process right there. Ring the bell only when all decisions are made. Okay. So it looks like they've removed the bell that alerts me, and they've added the part that says, yes, you can answer yes, no to these. But I like the bell. So we're putting that back. Okay, so yeah, the plan file from the last run is stale. It was a prefix version. Okay, so if I run it again, it will copy a clean version. Okay, do I need to npm run review? And Peter is off and running. So a lot of nice improvements here. I'm going to end this video right now because it gets too long, obviously. Hopefully you found it interesting. I'll continue to update this, and I'll continue to post the results of my discovery here. But this is very interesting and certainly going down the right road. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.